Can you hear and see me now? Can you hear and see me now? Can you see me now? Can you hear me now? I've been going on for the past 10 minutes, like everything was going on, and I did not know that no one could see me because everything was showing up the way I wanted to on my side. So, hello, Andy B. Hello, Zero Redux. Hello, Bob Mosel, Fluffy the Griffin. I've been here. I've been here all along. It was me. It was me all along. But apparently, man, Melon was doing so well with the lack of kind of bugginess, and I feel like lately I've just hit up with everything. Now let me let me let me go back and share my screen again, which I was looking at, though apparently only with myself. Was Here we go. Give me a second. I will get to do the trim again now that I know I could do that. So this is what I was looking at, but apparently all by my lonesome. All by my lonesome for the past 10 minutes. And I saw stuff happening in the chat, but I didn't know it was literally you guys couldn't see me. I just thought, oh, they're having a conversation of their own. That's why I popped up that thing. Little did I know. So thank you. I guess it was Bob Mostel, whoever it was that actually literally put that they can't see or hear me, because otherwise I would have just been going on, could have gone on the whole hour, not knowing, because I wasn't seeing it. I was literally seeing what you guys are seeing now. Hopefully this. So, oh my gosh. Well, as I said at the beginning, my throat, I've been suffering through a cold all week long. So apologies for that. And now obviously apologies for Melon fooling me into thinking I was actually streaming to folks. Thankfully, I can at least see the chat. So chat, you saved me. Oh, brother. Well, let's get back to it, or let's get to it back for me, since I'm going to go back and repeat what I was saying before. Won't be as good. This I'm looking at. The first thing I picked out was posted by Shieldice or Shieldice Studios, whom I have reached out to. They have not sought to reach back to me, so apparently they care not about me, which is fine. I shed a tear, since Shieldice doesn't seem to be interested in dealing with me, but whatever. It happens. It happens. I can't. I'm not yet large enough to pull a. Do you not know who I am? So I'll just have to cry, weep for myself. But they've been putting out cool stuff, and I want to see more of it. But they don't want any. Anyhow, they posted this called Dungeon Doors. Rooms and connecting dungeon halls can be broken up by doors. Doors not only allow the party to rest before continuing, but can be used as story devices or foreboding barriers. Roll on the tables here to determine a door's type, its status, and any unusual properties or occurrences that might happen when you enter or exit through the doorway. Add secret doors to your dungeon for players to find and hide loot or monsters beyond them. So first we get door materials. It's just a D20, gives you a bunch of different materials. The one question I had before, maybe you guys can actually hear what I'm saying, can potentially answer me, is I don't know what magic means in this usage, because we have energy. I presume that depending on the properties, a lot of these doors are going to be magical in some way. So I don't know when they say the door's material is magic, if they mean that it's made of magic, or that something else is, it has a magic aura. I don't know. I might want to figure out what exactly, or maybe I guess it's up to me as a GM to determine what I mean by that. The other thing that's, I guess, is interesting, it's neither here nor there, but these are flat D20 rolls. So you have as much chance of getting something like stone or wood as you do getting fabric, flesh, and glass, or it's made of vines. So that's it doesn't bother me necessarily, but I was just thinking it's kind of interesting that we're not, once you decide to roll on this, you really are kind of wide open to getting all kinds of potentially crazy stuff. And then the other one was, the other table I'd covered was these statuses. You get stuff like, wide open, splintered, sealed. Again, well, I say again, because I'm repeating myself, but you guys don't know that. One of the interesting things on this table is you have some of these, which I don't like them as statuses, because they're not status. It's more about the nature of the door, and I felt like that they had kind of merged these into two. It's kind of had two tables worth of stuff and merged them into one table. So you get something like, okay, its status is wide open. Makes sense. It's a jar. Great. Closed, barricaded, Fine. It's automatic. That's not a status. That's really what kind of door is it? It's an automatic door. It's rotating. Now it could be literally rotating, like it's spinning around, like it's under the control of some kind of spell or weird poltergeist. But probably they mean that it's a door that rotates as opposed to just opening, which again is not a status. It is the nature of the door, and also sentient. The status isn't sentient. That's the type of door it is. So I think you could really take. There's probably 3 or 4 of these. Or another one was one way. It's a one-way door. That's not a status. That's the kind of door it is. It is a one-way door. It's not a door that is currently one way and then later. I don't know. It's just a weird thing. Yes, Ian, they do have the slamming status, which, yeah, it's being opened and shut, which is kind of cool. It sort of was a house on the hill or whatever, haunted house on the hill. What was that movie? Hill House on the Hill. I don't know whichever one had. They had that remake with Liam Neeson. They had a lot of slamming doors going on. So kind of cool, but I thought probably split those up because I almost think, let's see, if you took out rotating, that's 1, automatic 2, slamming 3, or not slamming, 2, sentient 3, one-way 4, you could just make that a little D4 table for kind of if it has an unusual type. Descriptor. Yes. Right, because exactly, Ian. Because when I look at something like status, it's kind of like, well, how is the door right now? And you say, sure, it's wide open, or it's ajar, or it's closed. Right, it's sentient, so it's sentient right now, but then later on, it's not. It's a one-way door right now, but later on, it's not. It's just kind of doesn't totally make sense. Nothing says maybe they mean magic like a force field, like nothing but magic. Yeah, maybe I would have used force instead of magic. It's just whatever. It's not a big deal. It would take me about 2 seconds just to figure that out, but it's an interesting use. So now we have these embellishments, and repeating myself from before, that it's only repetition to me. Another D20 table. These are good. I think I mentioned at the start. No, I didn't. I'm going to keep doing that this whole time. I mentioned originally, before you guys could actually hear me, that I felt like you'd want to roll these in advance so that you could really get them into the context of the place. So when you're coming up with these doors made of interesting materials that have these embellishments and that stuff we're going to see in the rest of these tables, you can really build them in the context of the place. So it doesn't feel, unless you really want to feel just random or that it specifically doesn't fit for some reason, you want to be able to make these things fit. So you can get stuff like carved with wooden floral decor, or it has a brass knocker that's depicting a lion that has a large single eye that watches you, right? So when you're getting these and you're rolling these up in your dungeon, or when you're writing up your dungeon, think of those things you're getting and then tweak them to fit. Or if you're rolling it because you didn't think of it, maybe it's a door in a dungeon that's part of a module or something, and you wanted to add some of this flavor into the mix. Take a moment before you spit it out at the players. What could it mean? What is the context in this space of these things? We get a bunch of those. We get some door access types. Might need a key, a specific key, might need a password, might need a hand of evil to touch the surface. Evil. I might change evil to, say, chaos alignment. I suppose it depends on your game if you have an evil. Evil with the capital E, or just people who are bad, or what that means. I think that the idea of a door that is, what would be the word, that is has an alignment, or has an alignment favoritism, or is triggered by an alignment, or is pretty cool. And I hadn't really thought about it before. And I use alignment. I think of alignment all the time in all kinds of ways that it can kind of be active in the world, but I hadn't really connected it to a door yet. So that's a cool thing. Ian says, makes me think of the doors in Fable that require you to complete some task before they would be satisfied and open. Oh yeah, it could be. Also in Labyrinth, they had the door. I mean, there's always those doors that did riddles and things, like in Labyrinth, which one of us is lying, if you wanted to make it kind of like that. But even if you didn't want to give them a riddle, necessarily having these doors that you interact with in an interactive way, besides interact with in an interactive way. Well, duh. What I mean is outside of the just getting out your thieves tools, or just opening it with brute force, is always good. Then we get some properties. Time stops when you pass through. You feel sleepy as you enter. The door locks behind you. The door is a portal to another area. And much like with the embellishments, you're going to want to figure out, if you're putting this into a pre-existing dungeon, you're going to want to make sure these make sense. Probably it would be, excuse me, probably it would be good. I wonder if there would be a way to link these, because what I would like to do is, oh boy, my voice, my throat is not cooperating today. It would be nice to make up some embellishments and link them to certain door properties. In other words, we have, let's say we take an embellishment, a large single eye that watches you, and then link that to one of these properties, assuming it has a property. We're going through this whole thing, so we're going to roll. We're going to say, okay, doors with these eyes that watch you, let's come through and let's just see if there's something. What might be? Let's say, okay, so maybe the eye is with a magical, so the property would be the door triggers a magical sentinel. So I'd come up with a few of these connections. Okay, doors with eyes trigger sentinels. Now when I'm building my dungeon, I'll start to pepper those in there. Doors with eyes, sentinels. I'll have 3 or 4 of them. Of course, we'll have some regular doors. Then we'll have these doors with eyes. Maybe we'll have another one. Let's see, another one of these. I'm just pulling from this list. Painted, let's see, it has painted family crest and motto. And let's see, that one might... What might that one do? Okay, let me pick a different one that's a little bit easier. Runic markings within the surface. And then that one, because there's an easy one. The runes sear into your skin as you pass. Now I've got 3 or 4 of these. I can start putting those in my dungeon. And that way the players can learn. First time they open up a door with an eye on there, they get attacked by some kind of unseen servant creature thing. Second time they see an eye on the door, hopefully they call back and say, wait a minute, whoa. First time we went into a door with an eye, some invisible thing, invisible stalker came after us. So let's think carefully about this one. But of course, hopefully, if these doors are protected or triggering these things, maybe hopefully means they're protecting something. So, there's something good here, but we know there's going to be some kind of sentinel in here. And then we can even play around with that. So maybe the first one is an eye. The second one, maybe it's 3 eyes. Now you go, uh-oh, if the one eye had one of those things, does 3 eyes mean there's going to be 3 of them? Or, what does this mean? And you can play with them thematically in your dungeon. And then the runes, doors got runes, open it up, take some damage, runes sear into your skin. Maybe there's some other effect. Okay, now we see another door with runes. We have an idea what that means. So basically, you can build up, as you're going in the dungeon, the things of how the dungeon, these aspects of the dungeon, relate to each other. These doors that do different things. So that in this dungeon, I would want that consistency. Again, unless you're trying to be, what is it called, a funhouse dungeon, where you can kind of throw consistency out the window. I would almost I think I would probably position this as come up with 3 or 4 embellishments, maybe depending on for a level or for a small dungeon, and maybe if it's a mega dungeon type, different areas, different levels might have different embellishments, but then link those up with different things and then put them in the dungeons. That way they all kind of make sense and your players can learn and you can have this thematic unity for everything that's happening. Let's see. Ian says, mentions the automated doors in Hitchhiker's Guide that are always cheerful and have a sunny disposition. Yes, I always like those. And then, of course, Marvin being miserable. Finally, we get secret doors. Just giving, and this is basically if you have a secret door, what it's hiding behind or what it makes it secret. So you get, it's a D12 roll. Could be hidden behind an old, dusty old bookcase, built into the wall with a slight crack that's visible, well-hidden hatch in the corner, footprints, lead to a plain wall, a whole bunch of that stuff. Once again, probably want to integrate that so you don't get goofy stuff in the moment, like you narrate the room and it's a kitchen, and then, oh, you found a secret door hiding behind the dusty old bookcase. What's the dusty old bookcase doing in the corner of a kitchen? We don't know. Roll these in advance. Still, good stuff. This is from Shieldice or Shieldice. I'm just gonna start saying Shieldice. Give it a thumbs up. Oh, here's a good one. A one-page printable simple hexcrawl matrix posted by Raphael Sadowski. Let's see what we have here. Did they post? Okay, so just so we get some context for this, Raphael _Sadowski says, struggling with creative block, I came up with an idea for a tool by accident. A one-page, small, simple hexcrawl matrix. Maybe you'll find it useful, or maybe it'll stir your own or your creativity in turn. I imagine using this in a, say, OSR or Played by the Apocalypse campaign, where PCs explore new worlds / planets / dimensions, parenthetically, shards each session. We have hexes. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Hex alert, hex alert. So either calling them shards, I guess, for worlds, but you could just replace that with hexes. We've got an area. So we got a middle section where we can fill in this locality. We are encouraged to think about a theme and an aura, maybe atmosphere. Think about some random events that could happen there. And they have encounters. I don't know S1, S2, S3. I don't know what system this is supposed to be in. I don't know what system Shards has, but it seems like we have basically 10 blanks for I guess, normal encounters, and then 3 that are marked S. Is that S for special, or is that S for something else? I'm not sure, but 13, if you're using some kind of, you could just use it as sort of an overloaded encounter die. As chaos or something else increases, you could add some modifiers to this to push from 1 to 10 up to the 13. And we've got and then we have some, looks like little cards for challenges. Conceptually, I really like it. I don't know that it gives me quite enough room to do everything I'd want to put on there, those blanks for challenges. I might, instead of having challenges, maybe I would put, I'm not sure, something else, because you don't have a lot of room to really talk about what's in each hex. So here we have numbered, we have 10 hexes. Maybe oh, you know what? I see. Never mind, I see. So you're not rolling on the encounters. The encounters go in each hex. Each hex has an encounter, and then we have these kind of bridging hexes, the ones that are gray, S1, S2, S3, go in the S1, S2, S3 spot. I see now. Maybe I wouldn't call it encounters then. I'm not sure what I would use the challenges space for, but I do like this in terms of, I've talked about before about having, what have I called them? Kind of your localities or regions where you have multiple hexes potentially. It could be one, but it could be more that have characteristics that are shared between all these hexes. So let's say you're talking about the, I don't know, the ancient forest. Okay, so the ancient forest may be 3 hexes wide or tall or whatever. It may encompass 3 hexes. And each one of those hexes might have something individual about it, but it might have a lot that's in common. So you could use something like this, so you could have those 3 hexes. You can have all the commonalities, and you could sort of bullet point the things that are how each one of those 3 hexes may deviate from the norm or add on to it or replace something. Let's see. Dungeon Master Masterclass says, I like this for organizing the stuff that's in a section of a hex map, encounters, challenges. Ironically, I don't think I need the hexes. Yeah, you might not. You might not. I think you mentioned before that you don't use hexes, but you use a lot of the other hex map tools. And the hexes are just kind of, it's a tool, right? If you need it, great. They do some, I think they have some nice features, but if you don't need it, then that's also great. You know, you don't need to use it if you don't need it. Ian says, pet peeve on this, the hex arrangement doesn't fit against another. If your players went to the edge, you can't use this as the next hex sheet because they won't line up. This is true. We would have to, for more of a, I think they mean this more in using it for like a pocket dimension or some kind of self-contained world, in which case they wouldn't have that. This, you know, that would be the edge. Though maybe we might want to go, are they all these worlds triangular or something? Or is that we just wrapping that around in a sphere? Or how big are those hexes maybe? But yes, I think if I was going to totally use this, it would have been nice maybe to have your standard fill in those other hexes so we have more of a standard shape. I agree, Ian, but still. I mean, I like a lot of the features, you know, maybe mix this out, change a little bit of the wording a little bit. But it is a nice way for getting a sort of a broad overview of your region. Let's go back and find another. Okay, so hey, look at that. There's I posted my interview with the Morkborg folks. Always good. Here's one that looks good. Is it really worth the effort? D86, annoying and cumbersome treasures. Give an upvote. It's really interesting, all the different kind of dice mechanics. I don't know, D86? Or other words, roll a D8 and roll a D6. So you get this matrix. On the columns are just numbered 1 through 6. On the rows, we're given an overall quality, and then when we combine the two, we get something specific. So the qualities we can have are fragile, bulky, odorous, heavy, noisy, awkward, alive, and weird. The weird ones, for example, if we rolled a D8 and the D6, and we got 1 on the D6 and 8 on the D8, we get a screaming mirror that claims it was murdered. If we rolled 3 and 7, we get a flock of sheep that are scared and hungry. And so on and so forth. Let me see. Oh, it's an image, so I can't go to that link. But this was the posted. I'll get the poster's name that I failed to mention, but it's was put up by Pointless Monument Games. You can go to their pointlessmonument.itch.io to support them. But I'm also hate to say this, but I think the Welsh Piper has better resources for hex templates. Going back to the hex one, yeah, they're very simple and nice. Are there Bob Mazdell? Did they have? I haven't given to Welsh Piper in a while. Do they have some templates that give more stuff, or are they all kind of just the very basic? I forget. I know they had one that maybe had just some lines to fill in stuff and then a hex. I mean, you can't go wrong with those in terms of just your basics. But I like that people are trying to think of it a little bit differently. And the poster's name for this was Endless Pug. I like these. The one thing that might be interesting would be to take some of these. I don't know what it would be. So I almost would rather have. All right, okay. Hang in here with me there. I'd rather have, say, these two on both axes. So we've got rows: fragile, bulky, odorous, heavy, noisy, awkward, alive, weird, and also along the top. And then instead of having specific things in here, because I always feel like the problem with these specific things these are great the first couple times you use them. But then the more you use them, the more you're going to start to turn up the same things. And then they become less useful. So that when you're going down, you go fragile, and you would get something like fragile and fragile, which means it's like really fragile, right? Maybe it crumbles when you touch it, something like that. Or if you get something doubled up, bulky and bulky, it's just massively heavy. But you could also get things like, instead of giving me a specific one, you might get bulky and weird. And then maybe I have another table, or that maybe just thinking, well, what could be bulky and weird? And granted, it's not as useful in the moment if I'm leaving it up to the second to do that. But the rest of the time, maybe if I'm using this when I'm creating the dungeon, I would roll on this, and then I could start to think, well, what could be bulky and weird? And then maybe I could have a list of, hey, here's things that are bulky if I need bulky stuff. Here are some weird things, like it's screaming. So I could bulky a mirror. screaming the weird. So I could then combine those and say, okay, I got a screaming mirror. So you get a lot of these same results, but maybe the table would have more overall utility because it's a little bit vaguer, if that makes sense. Maybe not. But that was good, and it's gotten a lot of upvotes, so people are also finding it useful. So thanks for that. Endless Pug. What are some weird and interesting classes? I don't know. I'm not a class junkie. I mean, you can go into the Glog and find all kinds of weird classes. Weird, sometimes interesting. Ooh, someone posted their first hex map. Got to take a look at that, right? Give them an upvote. My first hex map. Posted by That's No Moon. Or That's No M00N. I'm guessing they mean that to be That's No Moon. So here they have it. They've done an interesting thing here. So they're using mostly color coding without any kind of symbology on there. They've got some dashed lines and some thick lines. And they've got some individual hexes are numbered. I don't know if those numbers are supposed to apply to the... I don't think they're supposed to apply to the entire region because there's one large region that's got multiple numbers. I see a symbol that looks like it's a tower. It looks like another symbol that looks like a monster. There's one symbol for some hills. But nothing else. There's another symbol on this island over here. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be a mountain or like a weird mystical something. Not sure. Let's see. Folks have questions, and maybe they'll ask the same questions I am. Zio Noir asks, are these lines roads? How do you use it at the table? Love the minimalist look. And the OP says, hello. Yeah, the lines are roads. My plan is to give the players 3 points per day for morning, midday, afternoon. Traveling a road is 1 point. Off-road is 2 points. And difficult terrain is 3 points. Players get different encounter tables for the road tiles as well as every colored area. Okay. That's pretty much, I think Twilight 2000 had that kind of deal, which I thought was a pretty interesting, simple way to do it. It's not as granular, but I don't know that we always need the granularity. Let's see here. Okay. And then Diogo Arte or Diogo Arte. Oh, the slaughtering of names. Hosted by me, Todd at Hex Press. Let's do some upvotes. Okay, so they ask, can you show us some of the encounters? The OP says, sure, these will get more fleshed out and specific, but here's what I have so far for encounters when traveling along the road. Got some wayward knights extracting tolls, a group of hungry deserters from the war in neighboring Ketch raiding a trader's cart for food, a rice wine merchant claiming to have superior drinks, a roadside shrine, a trader's cart being pulled by chained up ogre, a dead traveler on the side of the road with a small pouch of silver and a love letter in his pocket, a group of pilgrims on their way to a holy site, a man covered in tattoos, etc., etc. All cool. I like it. I might be a little bit too abstract for me, or maybe if I was in the zone of understanding what those different things meant. I don't have any sense of what the terrain is here. I keep wanting to say whether it's right or wrong. Let's say the light green is grasslands, the darker green is forest, the brown is... I'm not sure. We have a couple of shades of brown. I'm not sure. The lightest brown, I might say, is kind of deserty. Then there's purple. Is that mountains? I don't know. I like that stuff, even just in terms of being able to just look at it on a glance and then describe what I'm seeing or what the players are seeing when they're going in that hex. So I'm not sure. Some of these, are they? So there are these, I want to say that some of the lines are roads, but I don't think these other ones are roads. I think they're just to outline these areas. I'm not sure. But hey, as long as it works for them. Okay. Zuriel Redux says that Diogo Arte is Diogo Nogueira of OSR art fame. Okay, cool. But cool. Good work. Good work by what was their name? That's No Moon. Let's see what else we have. Oh yeah, there's a new OSR dedicated-ish Discord. I did join it. Check it out. I can't give it any thumbs up or thumbs down because I joined it just to kind of see what's going on. I'm not really going to be playing any games there, but I thought maybe it might be interesting if they are really dedicated to hex crawls, that, you know, if they have some good discussions and whatnot. But I mean, I don't see anything horrible about it. So if you're interested in hex crawling, maybe, or getting some hex crawl and joining some games, might be something to check out. Guides on setting up hex crawls posted by Spiders Webbing. They're looking for stuff. Oh, I got you stuff. I got stuff, pal. I don't know what that is. Give it a vote just in case. I can come in here later and pitch my channel, but for now, let's see if anything's Bandits Keep. Got to give them a vote. Heck yeah. Into the Warden Wild, I know. Why am I not being able to upvote that one? Let's see. All right. I don't think there's anything that people don't know. Gygax75, I meant to look at that. Ray Otis. I'll have to do that probably as its own video. I keep forgetting to go back there. 7 Voyages of Xylartha, but I haven't looked at it in forever. All right. Not really anything I don't think we're aware of. Dungeon Master Masterclass says, if you're the type to show the players the map, I think this is better than using icons. It makes them understand the map is not exact. I guess Dungeon Master Masterclass, but the icons don't really represent exactness either, because it's just sort of, I don't know, high level terrain. I'd be interested to know if that works better, if you're using colors that really... Maybe I think it works. I would say that maybe in that case, because we have sort of, some people will put, like in Shadow of Tower, in the Shadow of Tower, Silver Axe takes basically a realistic style map with terrain, elevation levels and all that, and then puts your hexes on top of it. So that map, if you even, and I think they have 2 ones in that zine. One is a GM facing version, one is a player facing version. The player facing version either has no landmarks on at all or just a couple. But that one does give you the appearance of, wow, this is an exacting map. We've got, you know, elevation changes and it's all that stuff. On the other hand, if you give it the kind of old school, like Isle of Dread kind of map where it's just mountains and it's just a triangle, or it's a mountain that represents the terrain in there, I kind of think you're still showcasing that it is symbolic and that it's abstract, but maybe using even abstract symbology. I mean, I really do like the classic, hey, mountains is just triangles instead of even drawing a pretty mountain. So maybe that's something to think about. But I never show the players the hex maps anyway, so I don't even have to worry about that. Legend Master Masterclass says, the less the maps look like Google Maps, the better. I do agree with that. But I kind of feel like your regular hex map doesn't look anything like Google Maps. You know, at least the ones that use the symbology. Like I said, the one in Tower Silver Axe and something like those where they're giving sort of detailed information, and some of that is meant to be player facing. You know, maybe it's a little bit different, but certainly something to be aware of. I think that's why you can just play up with the artistry or lack thereof of the maps, right? They are rough, they're crude. Look at medieval maps. They are not things that you can depend on like your GPS or something. They're meant to be taken, or they need to be taken with multiple grains of salt. This might be interesting. Where are we on time? All right, we're doing okay. Posted by Meat Boy or M3AT Boy. Another rules light way to play. Give them a vote. This is the rule set that I have been using to run OSR style games, based, I think, off of, or based on the excellent Searchers for the Unknown. It offers a light yet robust system for poking around in dungeons and finding treasure. The aim was to strip things down as much as I felt I could and still have a game I enjoy running. It may not be to everyone's taste, but I and my group like it, so I figured I'd share. It's pretty rough, so if you see inconsistencies or errors, let me know. Or ignore them, that's okay too. Some things I like about the system. There's no attributes. Everything is tied to class and level. Anything I want a class to be good at is tucked away inside the class. They're using racist class, just a personal preference. They use a spell dice system, a quasi-Vancian spellcasting system. It's nothing new, but I like it. We use an easy stunt slash save system, easy breezy system for doing stuff in game, and it's called Realms of Adventure. And they'd appreciate a look and a thought or two. All right, well, let's take a look. Oh, it's in a Google Doc. Oh boy. Loading it in another tab just so we can keep things nice and clean. How should I best post this? Folks want to follow along at home. Now, I'll post the Reddit link just in case things change. I don't want to have out there on blast forever and again. Link to that Google Doc. Realms of Adventure. I'm going to call it a work in progress, maybe. Zuriel Redux says, I wanted to run Tower Silver Axe, but the topographical map really throws me off. I need to make it look like a hex map, I think. Yeah, you probably could turn it into it. It is definitely a different way of looking at it. Because it does kind of, it's, in some ways it's easier because you can see things very clearly. On the other hand, if you're used to kind of having the abstraction, filling it in, it can be more difficult. Like, are we on a hill? Or like, what is this? What kind of terrain am I looking at? It is kind of funny. There is some really good information on Hex Map in terms of everything you can get out of that abstraction, but it just makes it makes everyone's individual experience, or not individual experience, everyone's experience in a thing more unique, good or bad way, right? Because if we're all looking at, say, the map that's in Shadow of Tower Silver Axe, we're all going to get really close to the same thing because it's got this kind of detail and specificity. Whether if he had just put some, and also I think the scale of it, in some cases when you zoom in close enough, either you have to reduce the size of your hexes or you get kind of weird things like, look, we're going to have kind of hills all around, but really we're representing one hill and not multiple hills. And in that way, kind of the abstraction of a hex map can be a little bit thrown off when you want to say, like, no, this isn't 6 hexes that are all little tiny hills. It's one hill that traverses 6 hexes, right? How do you show that? You could, I mean, there are ways to do it. You can show multiple maps. You can show other things, but it's kind of interesting ways of doing it. But I hear you. It definitely can, if you're used to using sort of classic hex maps, then you're throwing something like that where it has some hex map features, but then some more, I don't know, realistic map features. It can throw you off. All right, let's get into this. This is version 2.5 of Realms of Adventure, or sorry, I should say 2.5.1 version. Realms of Adventure is a role-playing game. Okay, I'm gonna skip the preamble. Not all player characters are equal. You're gonna roll 2d6 and see what makes you different. So you said you're not getting attributes, but you're kind of getting attributes. Just a little bit, right? Oh, you're strong. You're nimble. You're tough. Well, what is that? You're getting some bonuses to what would have been strength, dexterity, and constitution, but we're not calling it that. Or it's more like we're replacing attributes with tags. Excuse me. Something else. You can be clever. You can be a plucky youth. You can be wealthy. You can have an heirloom of your choice. You can be charming. You can be a leader. You can be wise, or you can be a weapons master. We have some classes here. You can roll D8 or choose if the DM is magnanimous. And looks like, okay, so here's the high level. We're just getting, so the classes they have are fighter, thief, cleric, wizard. And then the races classes, elf, dwarf, halfling, and half orc. I kind of like that they do put in, hey, these are other races from the viewpoint of humans. In other words, we're looking at this it has a humanocentric point of view. And look, whether we agree or disagree that the world should be humanocentric, we of course change if we want to, but I do appreciate that at least they're kind of, specifying. We're doing this for this reason. Agree with it, disagree with it if you want to, but at least we understand a little bit of why they're doing this. Fighters are strong, tough, and the most capable of warriors. All right, I'm not going to read through all the descriptions text. I'm just curious as to really just breeze through to kind of see what they're doing. Some fighters get a bunch of hit points. They get +1 damage per level. We don't know what stunts are, but they get +2 to them on stunts that are of athleticism. They're hardies. They get +2 in their saving throws, and they can carry 6 heavy things. Thieves are quick, subtle, and superior in surprise. I'm not sure what is that? It's probably a better way to term that. I get what they mean, but they're at a D8. I would not give them a D8. Clerics are a D8. That makes more sense because they're kind of half fighters. Thieves are not half fighters. They should not get the D8. That's just me. They get basically a backstab, +2 to initiative, and then stunts on +2 to stunts on subterfuge. So instead of, I guess, skills, we're getting this concept of stunts. Fighters are good at athletic stuff. Thieves are good at thiefly stuff, really. Clerics also get a D8 hit die. Also get that +1 to damage. They can banish undead. They get 1 divine spell per level. They can carry 5 heavy things. Thieves can carry 4 heavy things. Wizards, they get +2 to lore, kind of knowledge skills. They can memorize 2 arcane spells, +1 per level. They start off with, I guess, 2 spells. They can carry only 3 heavy things. And their spellbook is heavy, so one of their heavy things is their own spellbook. So really a spellbook plus 2 other heavy things. Dwarves get the biggest hit die. +1 damage per level, but only with melee attacks. Man, my throat. +2 to deeds, to dwarfish deeds, whatever they are. But also get bonuses to saving throws against diseases and poisons. Pretty much out of the BX playbook, so to speak. They can see in the dark. They can carry 8 heavy things. Elves also get a D8, or get a D8 hit points. They get +1 damage with bows and one-handed swords. They get elf +2 to elfish stuff. +4 to saving throws against charms and enchantments. And then elves know a single spell from the wizard's list, and then get a new spell every odd level, and they can carry 4 heavy things. I don't mind elves being at a D8, though maybe I would say D6. I don't know. But I definitely think thieves should be either a D6 and probably wizards at a D4. I don't know. There's a little bit. I feel like there's a little. They're fluffing up the hit points a bit. Maybe that's. I mean, it could just be that's by design and the game is hard. But I don't like the idea that your cleric and your thief has the same hit die. But I just could be a curmudgeonly old person in that regard, and I could certainly be swayed. Halflings get a D8. They get a +1 per level with light weapons. They get a +1 in their armor class, and it increases against giants and similar. They get halfling deeds. They get +1. They also get +4 when they're sneaking or hiding. They get +2 on all their saving throws. They can carry 4 everything. Half orcs, D12 like dwarves, +1 damage per level. But it goes up to +2 per level if their HP is below half. So in some ways, they kind of have a bloodlust sort of thing. If they kill someone in combat, they can take another attack. If they are below half hit points, they reduce any damage taken by 2, and that increases on odd levels. But if they wear heavy armor, they get a penalty, -2 penalty to all rolls, and the -3 if they're wearing very heavy armor. They get that same +2 to stunts of athleticism. They can carry 7 heavy things. And we get languages, we get hit points, you can get a mulligan, encumbrance. All right, so I'm going to scroll through this stuff because I don't care on the equipment and stuff. Is there anything? Just look if there's anything interesting. I'm more in the stunts. Got some morale rules. That's good. Hit points are not meat. That is also good. Terrence says you're late. You are late. But that's okay, Terrence. I accept you anyway. Fluffy the Griffin says, for rules light, this is a lot of stuff. Yeah, well, they're rolling out. It's putting out everything. Equipment lists and whatnot. Okay, for stunts. This is kind of their skill system. Just run OSC at that rate. Well, that's why I like BX, or it's the white box. But I really just want super rules light. Hard to get any lighter than the 3 brown books. Stunts, you're going to roll a D20 plus modifiers against your current armor class, meeting or exceeding your armor class and indicate success. So this is interesting because the less you're wearing, or the higher, whatever, the less well armored and shielded up you are, the better you are, which is kind of cool. In the concept that if you're running around just clothes, you're going to have the best chance at doing something. I mean, maybe it wouldn't make sense for all. There are probably some edge cases where you go, well, why would wearing heavy armor affect my ability to drink a lot of booze. I was like, I don't know, maybe it's your arms getting weighed down with the extra. You're wearing down your muscles. You're fatiguing your arms by having to you're lifting those mugs up and down wearing plate mail. So take it off. I don't know, but I think it's interesting. And then there is a note here that if you think AC is not applicable, that you can use these DCs down here. So we go from easy to impossible. That's fine. We get some reactions. Oh, it's interesting. So they split it up from the reactions. We get animals. Though interesting, I think maybe because they haven't picked these out yet, but the animals have a reaction that goes to civil, which maybe I would just put friendly or tame in quotes, make them more animalistic instead of just the same that you would get from evil beings, basically. Goodly beings go from wary to friendly, and evil beings are hostile, wary, and civil. This might be, I don't know if I like this one too much. Just because you're good doesn't mean you can't be hostile. You can't, and I always like to think about those things of, well, if this good person is hostile towards us, then it gives me some insight into them. If they're just wary, I don't know. And evil beings don't necessarily, you can be evil, but doesn't mean you're frothing for blood at all times. Ian says, when I hear rules light, I think of something like lasers and feelings. You have 2 stats, lasers and feelings. I mean, yes, that is, yeah, maybe we should say this is rules medium. And we get spells, which I'm not going to go through. And experience. I will say this, it is full featured. They're not leaving anything out. It's got everything you want in there. We might argue that, excuse me, Mr. or Ms. or Meat Boy, excuse me, author Meat Boy or M3A T Boy. Maybe it's not that light anymore, but it's a good attempt. It's fine. I like it. I don't know that I would use it, but that's no mark of shame against it because I wouldn't use it because there are lots of rules I like and things that I don't end up using for one reason or another. Ryan Smith says, thinking about how drinking affects the number of times you have to doff your heavy plate leggings to pee. That's another good one, right? You got to take off that massive cod piece, that steel cod piece every time you got to go to the bathroom. And Ian says, I imagine you just need to lift up a plate flap. Is it? Because I've seen the ones where it's like a piece. I don't know if they flip up or down. Do they have a hinge? These are things we need to know. All right, so because I lost 10 minutes, I'm going to try to get it back now. So we're going to go see some other stuff before I close up shop for the week. Let's see. Unearthing the Goblin God. This one, okay, this one's a blog. Is this going to be one of those where I think it's going to be an easy read and ends up being 200-page blog if I were to print it out? Let's see. How big, how long is this? Okay, okay, good. It's got more comments than length. Not ultra light. We'll give it a read. This is called The Failings of Fail Forward. That was posted on Tuesday on the let's see, DAE Games blog. I'm going to put this in the chat so you can follow along if you'd like to. Taryn says, it's the codpiece talk that keeps me coming back to these streams. Well, I aim to please. That's what we need. If that's what I need to do to keep folks tuning in, continue talking about cod pieces, I will make that happen. Let's see, the Reddit poster was Ryu289. I don't know if that's the author, but it was posted on the DAE Games blog called The Failings of Fall Forward. Posted on Tuesday, March. Oh, this is from 2016. Really? Someone resurfaced this thing as 7 years old. All right, 7 years old, but we're here, so we're going to read it. I should have looked at that date first. But we're here, It's new to us, darn it. So let's read into this. All right, so here we go. Like yes and, or yes but, or yes or roll the dice, and so on. Fail forward is one of those things that seems to get a lot of praise in the quote-unquote indie RPG / story games camp, but despite being one of the largest, if not the largest publisher of third-party Dungeon World content, is something I disagree with. I also like, quote, yes and, unquote. I found a variety of definitions for fail forward, but near as I can tell, it's essentially a reinterpretation of failure. Instead of a character trying to do something, failing, and having to think up of some other way to keep going, you ultimately give the character what they want, but you also hit them with some bad thing along the way. An infamous, quote unquote, example of fail forward is when a character tries to pick a lock on a door and fails, though I've also seen examples involving climbing cliffs. In a normal RPG, if the character fails to pick the lock, either because she rolls low or the difficulty is beyond her skills, she just fails. Now, in a horribly written adventure in which the only way to proceed towards your goal is through a locked door, and the only way to proceed through the locked door is by picking it, this could be an issue, assuming it's also being run by a horrible GM that never deviates from the adventure as written, that is. And here we have a side note. They call it a site note. Frankly, I think this would be an excellent, if maybe frustrating, learning experience for both the GM and even his players. Don't write an adventure with only one specific way to win or move the game forward or whatever, especially if it hinges on a one-time dice roll. Also, don't be afraid to modify an existing adventure. End site note. When relying on fail forward, you instead rule something along the lines that the character actually does pick the lock, but she triggers a trap. Guards show up, are waiting on the other side, replace with wandering monsters as needed, breaks your lock picks, takes a really long time, and so on. Fail forward proponents claim that by going this route, you prevent the game from grinding to a halt due to one bad roll. But the problem with this is twofold. First, the consequences are often irrelevant to the character's capabilities and skills. A trap shouldn't suddenly be present due to a failed skill check, because the character's lockpicking skill has nothing to do with the presence of traps. Same goes for a guard patrol and wandering monsters, and the weather getting worse, which I've seen pitched for characters that fail a wisdom check while scouting or traveling. Another site note. One of the posts I read while researching the topic made the absurd claim that an objectively more exciting way of handling a lockpick failure was to simply tell the player that their character totally knows a guy that can pick the lock for them. Personally, I'd be bored if the GM just spoon-fed solutions to me, but then I have no problem thinking of alternative strategies, failing, coming back later, dying, etc. The only two outcomes, that was the end of that site note. The only two outcomes that seem reasonable at all are how long it takes and the broken lockpicks, both of which can be handled in something like Dungeons & Dragons without the GM just arbitrarily declaring them to have happened in order to spare the players from having to think. Which leads to issue 2. Fail forward robs the players of the chance to be creative and figure out a way around an obstacle. As a GM, I love seeing the kind of ish my players come up with. In the case of a locked door, maybe they'll try to bash it in, wait outside for someone to come through and ambush them, disguise themselves as guards, try stealing the keys from the guards, charm one of the guards, tunnel around the door, hire someone with the necessary skills / abilities, or gasp, come back later when they're more skilled or have an ability or item that'll get them through, like, say, a portable hole. Fail forward comes across as an inconsistent quote-unquote solution for lazy DMs and or entitled players that don't like to quote-unquote lose or even take the time to come up with a plan B. They want to get through the door, so just have it open regardless of their skill check, and if they fail, have guards suddenly appear for them to fight instead because that's easier. Well, so long as the door is barring them from getting on with the quote-unquote story. Or you could let your players try, let them fail, and if they're still alive, let them try again. It may not be as quick or as easy, but when they do succeed, it'll be more rewarding for both sides of the screen. Aaron says, I'm failing forward at new OSR content. That's kind of true, actually, in multiple ways. Brian Smith says, what about butt and? Oh, the infamous butt and problem. Brian Smith also says, I think a fair forward in this example, you open the door, but the element of surprise is gone. You do it very loudly or something. Yes, I think the problem or the thing that maybe this person is missing, I get what they're saying, right? So you pick the lock, guards show up. What does guards have to do with picking the lock? But part of, in systems that use a lot of fail forward, or something that I like anyway, is you look at the intent. What is the intent of the action? Okay, thief, you are picking the lock. Why? As opposed to, because you come up to a door, the door is locked. You could go to a different door, leave it alone. You could bash it open. You could pick the lock. You could do something else. The question then becomes, you're picking the lock, and you ask the player, why are you picking the lock? If you ask the player what their intent is, and their intent is, I want to, if we bash the door, then anybody that comes later is going to see that we bashed the door. But we basically made an irreparable change to the door. We have altered the environment in a way that's going to be visible to anybody who looks sideways at the door and see that it's hanging off the hinge with the entire, locking mechanism busted out. So we want to pick the lock. I think at that point, when you're saying, okay, I'm picking the lock because I want to preserve the door so that we are still undetected. Then as the failure for that comes into play, you pick the lock. In other words, you open the door, but you were doing it this way to prevent a certain outcome. That outcome is not prevented. You have picked the lock, but in doing so, let's say you pick the lock and the entire cylinder falls out of the door and you can't put it back in, something like that. Well, now you've opened the doors, you have failed forward, but the consequence of that failure is that now this thing you were trying to do, which was be sneaky, has failed, because anybody looking at the door is going to know that the door has been locked or has been jimmied open in some way. That becomes a failure. By the same token, let's say this person said, I'm trying to pick the lock so we can do this silently and quietly. So the guards that may or may not be on the other side of that door, because as players, we don't know, don't become alerted. Well, in that case, in the fail forward, you might say, yes, you've opened the door, but you've made a lot of noise. The cylinder fell out of the door, made a big clang on the ground, and now you can hear movement. Or maybe you don't hear movement, now you're going, oh, okay, this clang now reverberates through the dungeon. So the consequence is based on the intent of the person. So while it doesn't directly relate to how does picking a lock make a ton of noise necessarily, or bring guards in, you can start to make that through line of, I was picking the lock to be quiet, I got the lock open, but I failed at being quiet, and that failure has led to noise, which now means that this thing we were trying to do for that. So to me, I look at that fail forward, if you're going to use that, is something that you really want to lock in on getting that intent from the players. And then the consequence of failure in that failing forward scenario is tied into the intent. Hey, Scott Wagner, how are you? Terrence says, I think that's how Gumshoe does investigations. You always find the clue, but with the skill, you can learn even more. That's certainly another way to do kind of fail forwardy stuff. Now it gets to 13 age, or the author, I should say, it gets to 13 age and fail forward. Someone pointed me to 13 ages section on fail forward, so I figured I'd address it specifically since it has some pretty cringe-worthy examples. It claims that outside of combat, true failure tends to slow action down, and that a better way is to interpret failure as a near success or event that happens to carry unwanted consequences or side effects. The first example has a rogue make a charisma check in order to befriend an officer on a ship. The rogue fails, and the GM interprets this to mean that rather than fail to befriend the officer, the character did in fact make a good impression, but the officer is now suddenly a cannibal. Well, that's interesting. The second has a character make an intelligence check to determine the likely result of a competition. He fails, but instead of him failing to guess correctly, the GM determines that he did guess correctly, but a gang of gnomes controlling the bets lost a bunch of money and for some reason blame him. So what does the guy being a cannibal have to do with the character's charisma check? The same thing a character's intelligence has to do with a gang of gnomes losing out on a bunch of money, nothing at all. A much better way of handling the first situation is to have the character fail to make a good impression and just leave it at that. If the guy happens to be a cannibal, then he could also set his sights on the annoying character as his next meal. This adds tension or whatever to the game and doesn't bizarrely punish the character for a completely unrelated reason. For the second one, I don't know, the character guesses wrong, and then it's up to the GM to determine how the competition ends and thereby whether the character wins or loses money. Winning and losing money is sufficient all by itself. I guess if the character is making a show of winning a bunch of money, maybe someone would try to rob him. Then they have some links to stuff. So I have 13H somewhere. Haven't read it. Terrence says, sudden cannibalism can strike at any time. Know the risks. I don't know these examples. They do seem a bit goofy, but it really is your style of game. I could see in a game like Toon where you're kind of playing sort of wacky, though I don't think of 13H as wacky, that sure, you befriend the guard, but then the guard likes you so much, but they like you and they want to eat you. I can see if you were playing a Bugs Bunny scenario and there's Elmer Fudd, you pick up a conversation and you think you're making this good impression, Elmer Fudd, but then in the thought bubble in Elmer Fudd's mind, you just see the, Bugs with the apple in his mouth or getting dumped into the stew or whatever. So yeah, I mean, that's weird, right? Sure, those are weird. I don't know that I would, if I were trying to impress upon someone a fail forward system, that I would use those specific examples. I mean, the one you could say about the rogue, the one with the rogue is defendable only in this sense that you would say that charisma check was not was both the befriending attempt, but also which of the officers they meant to befriend, and one of them was a cannibal, so one of them that becomes the cannibal one. I don't know. Those are a little bit odd. I confess, but I feel like it's a little bit of straw man here because picking these cringeworthy examples as kind of the proofs of why it's bad. I mean, I think there are plenty of examples that you could pull out that aren't horrible, that you could conceive how they could happen. I don't disagree with what they're saying in terms of, do we want to encourage this? That players should find no obstacles in their path and that everything should be smooth. Though, of course, fail forward is adding difficulties. It's just different, that they can keep moving forward. I think in some games that might be appropriate. Some adventures, I think in a lot of modern gaming, there's the concept of revisiting places isn't one that GMs and players want to do. Everything is in a very linear method. I don't mean linear necessarily in Railroad, but that you go to each place kind of one time. We're going into this dungeon, and then we're coming out, and then we're moving on to the next thing, and we're going into this town, and then we're done with this town, we're moving on to the next thing. And there isn't a lot of revisiting places. When I think about things like Horror on the Hill, or say maybe even Keep of the Borderlands is even a better example, the characters are kind of encouraged to be going back to places multiple times. So needing to come back with new lockpicks, or needing to go get the thief in town to come and pick the lock, or needing to kind of level up before you come back is something that makes sense because you're going to be doing that. So if you're going to be going back to town, and you have this understanding, I think, an appreciation of, we're going to be doing this a lot of times. But if you're playing a game in which you're only going to be doing this once, you're not going back to town because there's no town to go back to, and you're only going to be moving forward. And once you move forward, you're not coming back. Then some of these things that we might look at classically and say, sure, just come back later and hang it. It's like, no, I need to solve this. If I'm going to solve it, I need to solve it now. And if it is the thing that's blocking your progress, then I need something to get through this now. So not that I disagree to say with some of what they're coming from, but I don't know if they use the best examples. Of course, this is also, apologies, 6 years old that they posted. So this person might have amended their ideas on this between now and then. But this was someone posted onto Reddit for whatever reason. I was fool enough to fall for it, but I did it. So there we are. All right, let's see some of the comments in the chat, and then we can call it a stream. Reminds me, you need to make lunch, Scott. Yes, please make lunch. I will be making myself lunch as soon as I get off of this. Flip the Griffin says, I feel like this is missing the point of some of these systems. Yes, it is. I'm not sure whether it's intentional or not. And plus, let's keep in mind, it's 6 years old, so some things may even be newer than when this was posted. The author had awareness of. Fluffy Griffin also says, Edge of Empire has a lot of this fail-forward gameplay because the action has to keep coming. Yeah, I mean, it's a style thing. I think that's part of what they're not appreciating, maybe, or that they just don't want to acknowledge, is that there's a stylistic element. If you're kind of running and gunning versus a more, I was going to say plotting, but I don't want to say plotting because I don't mean it's bad, but a more deliberate approach. You're just, there's some games where you kind of want to, you just want to keep going to the next thing, going to the next thing, going to that kind of adventure, as opposed to, let's ponder this and let's come back. Let's ponder it some more and let's come back. It's just a different style. For something, when you're doing that kind of run and gun style, you want mechanisms to help enable that, and doing something where you're taking away these things that are slowing down. Instead, you keep adding more pressure. So yeah, you're getting the next area, but instead of there being 4 guards, now there's 8. Why? Because you made a lot of noise, and that noise attracted more guards. I do think it's important, though, which they didn't really hit on precisely, but this idea of really figuring out the intent. And it's a good idea pretty much all the time. Players are going to do something, find out what the intent is behind it, so that you can really relate to that intent and act off of that intent. And I think if they had thought about that more, that some of those fail forward might have made more sense. And looking at what is the intent of the action, and then the consequence follows the intent. That Wagner said, I think that FF can introduce interesting complications, FF being follow forward. Obviously, it's not great in a dungeon crawl with multiple trips to the dungeon. Bob Mazel says, failed really far forward, pretty much. So Wagner also says the wizard finds the documents in the library they wanted, but an enemy faction is alerted to activity. Right. There are things that make sense because, like I said, I think maybe my takeaway from this is, or the thing I would use would be follow the intent, right? The wizard, you're doing this a certain way. Why? Oh, I want to find out before they find out. Well, you find out, but they spotted you. So now as soon as you find out, they find out too because they were watching you and you didn't, something like that. Or yeah, like you said, you find out, but they also, or they find out, they know that you know that they know that you know that they know that you know that they found out. Whatever. I think there's some ways to do it that aren't quite as, but this, I think they also kind of cherry picked some examples. I mean, we do that all the time, but in this case, especially the stuff with 13th Age, they seem to cherry pick some really goofy examples. And I don't know. I don't have 13th Age in front of me to find out, are those the only two examples they have, or whether they just went for the ones that they dialed up to 11. And then Terrence says, doesn't the narrative dice give Edge of the Empire succeed backwards gameplay too? I don't know. I have to go back and look at Edge of the Empire. I don't know. I don't think I've ever read it. I don't think I own. That might be one I don't own. I own the D6 Star Wars, but I don't have Edge of Empire, etc. Who did I talk to about Star Wars? Those Edge of Empire, was that which system that is? No, it's not Cortex. Is it Cortex? Who had to sell me on about coming on tonight. We'll have to get them back on to explain themselves with the fail forward or whatever, or succeed backwards, as Terrence mentioned. Scott says D6 Star Wars, the best Star Wars. Absolutely. And then Fluffy says you can succeed, but still have things happen badly. Yeah, I think that's a good. Oh, Genesis. Thank you, Terrence. Yeah, I can't remember all these different systems. My brain is too addled as it is. Well, listen, folks, I got to run. Thanks, everybody, join in. Apologies for all the difficulties, or I guess from my end, things were going swimmingly well, and only find out later that nobody in the stream could see or hear me. I could see and hear myself, and sometimes that's enough, but not today. But I'm glad I was able to get that worked out. Have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody, and I'll talk to you later. Best stream yet. I don't know, Bob, but I'll take it.